Good. Then welcome again and nice to have you. Thank you very much for joining. That's our agenda somehow, what we are going to do today together, and installing first Kubernetes. Christopher will show us on his environment how we are installing and introduce our Gitbook, and some announcements and news. Good news. The first great news is that Marky Jackson is back. I hoped he could join us today, but and I'm very, very, very lucky about that. So Marky helped us to get started with the initiative. Without him, it wouldn't be possible to get started, and supported us in by many issues, and also wrote our charter. So I'm getting some the guys, they does not work somehow. Okay. Okay, Arush is typing. Okay, Arush, could you please answer to Oliver? Yeah, some problems. Good.
Yeah, sure. I'll take care of that.
Okay, thanks. Good. Then there is a new training from Mirantis for that's advanced training for Kubernetes professionals as a preparation for the CKE exam. I had a look today, got the news, and you'll get a 50% discount if you subscribe early, but it's somehow costly. But okay, for professional training, that's normal. The other thing is that we got some feedback from our community members, those who had the CKE exam this week. I think that was Daniel and Just. They wrote in the channel that the exam was really hard, and it didn't work out of the box, but it's normal for the beta phase, I think. And then the next thing is there is a new Kubernetes meetup, the next gen Kubernetes, announced and set up by our friend Stefan Vetter. He is also a member of our leadership team in our community. If someone would like to join, here is the meetup, next gen Kubernetes, that's in Heidelberg, announced yesterday, and yeah, today we got 31 contributors and members. Okay, then here is the link to our Kubernetes or Kubespray Essentials, which Christopher is going to introduce to you in a few seconds, and then after that, I will continue here and show you the OpenStack Helm project, which is mainly developed and maintained by AT&T gurus and colleagues. So that was from my side for now. Christopher, I will hand over to you. So you should now have the control.
Okay, it's actually telling me to get some extension. So just you. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Can you see my screen now?
Yes, I see your screen.
Okay. Cool. Hi, everyone. So what we'll be looking at is how to use Kubespray to deploy a Kubernetes cluster. It could be on your Bare-Metall or on your virtual machine. So, but for this virtual class, what I have, it's very similar to what we have here. I have a separate Ansible deployment system, which makes it easier if you want to create a cluster or you want to reset it or you want to use it for multiple environments. So I highly recommend that you have maybe a virtual machine, or depends on you. A virtual machine will do. You just run this on your virtual box or on KVM. Then I have a KVM server running on Ubuntu. Then I have these 3 VMs running. Sorry? Did someone say anything? Okay.
It's okay. Go on.
Go on. Okay. So I have a KVM server here. Actually, I have my local lab here. So you can see I have Cube 1, Cube 2, and Cube 3, which is running on my local server right here. So the master will be on 192.168.100.10 and the other one .11. Sorry, this should be .12. I just saw that, and so I'll change that. I'll update it after now. So we'll be starting, everything we'll be doing at first will be on the Ansible deployment system. And for you to bring up your Ansible system, you could go on the Git book. This is the Git book on the Kubernauts Git book page. So you could go there and then you see the Git book for the Kubespray essentials. So then you see it could run on a Bare-Metall virtual machine or OpenStack. Hopefully we'll get to have the demo for the OpenStack soon. And then your host system, currently it runs on CentOS 7, then Ubuntu 16, then Debian Jessie, then CoreOS. Okay. So to sorry, I want to yeah. So to bring up your Ansible system, just make sure this is just a little guideline if you are bringing up the deployment system, which is Ansible. So you could install it via the pip command, then you install Ansible, then you need the net address plugin, then you need the Jinja 2 plugin also. Okay. Then you need to actually exchange your SSH keys from the Ansible deployment system with the Kube master and the worker nodes, so that at least there will not be need to be using the password. Okay. Then let me quickly show you my Ansible host. Then I've already populated the host file. So if you look at the host file, this is my host file, and this is the section for my deployment. The .10 is for the kubemaster, .11 is for the not worker 1, then the .12 is for the not worker 2. And if I do an SSH, the kubemaster from here, you see that sorry, let me see. I'm in the Kube master now. Okay. Sorry, that took a while. Then, let me test the connection to the NOT worker. Okay, so the NOT worker is also off. then the NotWalker2, which is the third system. So we are good to go. So sorry. So I'm trying to. Okay, this is the step. Just if you are interested in how to copy the SSH keys, how to exchange the SSH keys. So you can use the host name here or the IP address. I've done the host name mapping to the /etc host file. So if not, you can just keep this. Depends on how you want the cluster to be. Then also you need to populate the host file on the Kubernetes nodes also. So if we go to each of the Kubernetes node and check the /etc host file, you see that there is an entry for all the cluster nodes. So you see there's an entry for the kube master, there's an entry for the NotWalker1 and NotWalker2. So you do this on all your cluster nodes. Then if that's done, then the next step is to actually clone the Kubespray. You can go to the website here. Is an incubator project on the Kubernetes. You can clone this. Once you clone this, you come to your deployment system and you have a file. This is Ansible, Kubespray file. Should be git clone. You have all this. So the important aspect of this, once you have cloned the Git repository, then you move to the installation aspect. And this, you need to set up your inventory file because it's based on Ansible. So you need to create an inventory file for your deployment. So for our deployment here, if I go to inventory, I do this, I have the inventory file, inventory.cfg. So I'm keeping this very minimal so that it will be a bit faster. So the kube master, you see the kube master, that's the node we have just for the master alone. Then the etcd, the kube master will be running the API server, the scheduler, and the etcd softwares. Then the kube node, which is the worker node, I have the NotWalker1 and then the NotWalker2. So this is the inventory file that we'll be using for this deployment. Okay. Now for the if you go to the Kubespray website, now what we have now, before we had the version 1.68, but now the supported version now is version 1.73. Okay, so that could be a bit different from what you have in the Git book, but it was, when the Git book was written, it was version 1.68, but the version we'll be looking at now will be the version 1.73. Okay, and then the default network, the CNI plugin, the networking plugin is actually Calico. So you can also choose Weave or Flannel, but by default, Calico is the default network plugin. Then this is just the basic command you could use to bring up the cluster. So it depends on how your environment is. You could want to adjust this. For instance, if you have a sudo user and then you need to pass the sudo password, you can add that ask sudo password so that it can initiate the root privileges aspect of it. But for for our deployment today, this will just do for us. We already have the inventory.cfg file, and the cluster.yaml is where that signifies that's the Ansible playbook that is going to be used for this deployment. And also, let me go a bit back. We see this is the cluster.yaml file, and then if you want to tear down your installation, you could just use the reset. Let me see. Sorry, let me grab for the reset.yaml file. So if you want to reset your cluster, you want to delete all the configuration, you want to bring your cluster to the barest minimum again, then you use the reset.yaml. So for us to do this, to install this cluster now, we'll just use the command, the Ansible playbook, the inventory, which is the inventory, and then we launch the command, and then we wait. Before this class, I actually try to do a time to check how long it takes based on my own broadband connection. This took around roughly like 10 minutes or 10 minutes. So we wait a while, then it starts bringing up. This is going on. I just want to also show us some things from the Kubespray website. And Kubespray has something that is very, very interesting also, the high availability mode, which I believe it's worth also checking out. If you check the high availability mode, you will see that you don't need to worry a lot when you want to if you want to deploy your cluster with high availability. Like if you want to have multiple API servers, it actually has like HCD. You don't need much configuration for the HCD, because the multi-access in Kubespray is actually set to true. So the cluster members will access themselves, and then the API servers and other cluster nodes can actually do the load balancing and handle it. And if you have more than one API server, it actually has um, an internal mechanism. Is not scalable to a large deployment, but at least if you could use it to play around. So on the worker nodes, there is actually an Nginx proxy.
Christopher? I can't hear you. Christopher, do you hear me?
Hear you?
Yeah, now I hear you again.
I can hear you.
Yeah.
I Can you hear me?
Yes, yes, I hear you again. Arush, do you hear me?
I can hear you, Arash. Can you
Okay.
hear me?
Yeah, Arash, I can hear you, but
Can you hear me?
not
Yes, now
Christopher.
I can hear you, Christopher, again.
Okay, okay,
Go
cool.
on.
I I was going, yeah, I was discussing the internal load balancing for if you are running multiple API servers. Okay, so you don't need to, in a not too large deployment, you can actually make use of the Nginx proxy. There is actually a container that runs on all the worker nodes. So instead of the kubelet or the kube proxy connecting directly to the APIs, it's actually connecting to an Nginx container, which now load balances the API calls to the API server. So this can really help when you are running a high availability environment. And uh, I don't know if you got my explanation about the etcd. If you are running the etcd, Kubespray defaults to true when you are doing the multi-access. So the nodes can actually load balance their calls to the key value store servers. Then, but if you want to have a load balancer to in order to do some API, I mean, if you want to do O&M, your normal maintenance and operations, and you have multiple API servers, you can put a separate server, or it could be a VM. You can actually use a HA proxy, and there is a sample config that you can actually use on the Kubespray website. So with that, you can always be rest assured that you have connection to one of the masters. So that is if you are doing the HA deployment. So the HA deployment is just when you are running multiple API servers, schedulers, and the etcd servers. So with this can really go a long way in simplifying your experience when you are running high availability for your Kubernetes cluster. So the okay, it's still running. So could we log into any of the nodes just to see what is going on. You use your normal Docker. Okay, here you can see already have some images that have been pulled by Kubespray. Okay, and I mentioned that it's going to use an Nginx. Even though you are not running an HA proxy, it still uses the Nginx container. So, but if you now go into what do you call it? If you now move into a HA proxy deployment, you actually see that if you check the configuration for Nginx, you will see that it's load balancing the API calls to the multiple API servers. So it's almost the same thing. If we also check one of the worker nodes. Okay. Let's see whether some So it's not, it has not yet brought up, but the images are already there. So it's actually trying to configure is doing all the configuration, is doing the certificates, the TLS certificates, is exchanging it, and it's copying it to all the nodes. And hopefully very soon, maybe in like 5 minutes thereabout, it should be done. So let me check the master. Let's see if something is already on. If there is any container that is on, not yet. So once your deployment is done, you should actually see something like this. If you have a failed indicator here, you try to see the errors and try to find the reason for there. There are a lot of reasons why you could get a failed node, or it could be due to maybe network latency. Sometimes if your Ansible, if you are doing a remote deployment and your Ansible deployment system is not in the same environment, you need to also watch that. But once it's done, you should see something like this. You have the kube master, you have all the changes that was done. The local host is 0 because that's our deployment server, so no changes will be done. Then for the NOT worker 1 and 2, then you have all the services that were the things that were done there. Then if once our installation is done, we could also do the bash auto completion, so that you don't need to be, you can use your tab to auto complete the commands, and we can use this command just to verify our cluster. So don't know if while that's going on, if anyone has a question. Is there any questions so far?
Oh, it's fine. It's fine.
No.
It's fine. It's fine.
Then while that's going on, we could just I'm still working on the OpenStack aspect, but also before I forget, there is also the Vagrant. If you don't want to deploy this on a Bare-Metall, or you can actually do you can actually install this on Vagrant. You can use Vagrant to, you can see the Vagrant here. It has been tested on VirtualBox, and I've also done this some time ago, and I know that it works. So if you want to bring up this cluster just on using Vagrant, you can actually do that. So you need to have a Vagrant version that is at least 1.8, and it has only been tested with VirtualBox. I also use VirtualBox, so I'm not sure if it works on VMware. If it does, you could also let us know. So by default, it brings up three machines, and it runs. It uses the Ubuntu 16 box, Vagrant box. So, but you could also you can also you can customize it if you want. You could increase the number of nodes, which is default by 3, and if not, you can just use since Vagrant is just for testing purposes, you can just use it to test. And if you don't want to use the Ubuntu 16 box for the Vagrant deployment, you can actually use the Core OS if you want, or Container Linux, which is the new name, and you can just configure this file under the Vagrant directory in your Kubespray repository, the repository that we cloned before. So once you do that, if you do the SSH, Vagrant SSH to the first node there, then you can run your kubectl commands to get the nodes. Let's see. Wow. Okay, this is still going on. Let's see on the master if okay. On the master we have the etcd container. It's up. So hopefully we'll soon have the API server up also. The API server, Kubespray uses the hypercube deployment, so it pulls this from the CoreOS repository. So from there, it does it uses that to deploy the cluster components. Okay, let's see. Then, if you want to run this on OpenStack, it's possible, but you need the only prerequisite is you need to have a bit of operational knowledge of OpenStack, so as to make the deployment to be successful. So you could use, but the most important thing is when you are creating your OpenStack RC file, you need to specify your region name in your RC file, which is very, very critical. If you don't do this, Kubespray will actually give an error when you want to run the Ansible playbook. And also you need to give the tenant ID. So you could use this as a guideline. You can see the tenant ID here, and you can see the region name. The region name is mostly by default is region 1. So you don't, unless your environment is actually different, then you source your credential file just the way you do it if you want to run OpenStack commands. So once you do this, Kubespray will pick all these values, and then it will populate the API nodes in your cluster. It will populate with the cloud config file. So with that, if you check the cloud config file, you will see all this. And for you to have a feel of having a load balancer module, you can actually use that. So you can enable, once you are doing your OpenStack installation, make sure you enable the load balancer as a service, the LBAS as a service version 2. Version 2 was used for this deployment, and I think that's what is being supported as of now. So once you have this, and then you need to also make sure that your actual host names in your Ansible inventory file is the same thing with your instance names in OpenStack. This is very important also. And then if you are using Calico which is the default plugin, you need to do some extra configuration, because OpenStack will drop all the packets from the pods, because Calico advertises the pod IPs and the cluster IPs across the nodes. But OpenStack will only allow IP packets that comes from the IPs it knows about. And since the pods are actually running inside the VMs, then OpenStack will drop it. But you can also make use of, you can edit your neutron using, there is also a directive in Kubespray. There is a configuration they have done that actually works. So if you do that, and then you adjust your neutron plugin, your neutron configuration, then you can go ahead to deploy the configuration, the cluster. But if not, you can just make use of Weave or Flannel, because Weave and Flannel, they make use of encapsulation. So OpenStack works by default for other network plugin. So that's just that for the OpenStack aspect. So the deployment is still moving on. Let's see the. Okay, we still have only the etcd container running. Hopefully, we should be done anytime from now. But so far, if anyone has a question, you can let me know. So here is the Nginx aspect I told you about. It's to actually deploy the Nginx container on the remaining worker nodes. That's the not worker 1 and then not worker 2. And as I've explained, the purpose for that is for you to load balance the API calls, API connection from the worker nodes to the API server. That is if you are running a high availability environment, but still it still deploys that. Okay, we still don't have, but actually there, I need to soon run. Okay. Arash, is there any question, or maybe you continue with your
Thank you very much.
While the cluster comes up.
One question, how do I extend the cluster? It's enough that I adapt the inventory file, and from your installation, could I get a HA environment?
Sorry, could you get what?
Could someone, if they have, let's say the 3-node installation which you have on Bare-Metall, and they want to extend that to have 3 masters and some nodes to have an HA environment. And if I'm running, let's say, some applications on my cluster, would it be possible to extend the cluster with additional master nodes without downtime?
Yes. I did a bit of the test I did, although it's the upgrade test I did. How it works is, one, if you add a new file to the, let me open another. If you add a new file, sorry. So what you do is you actually add the new master node. You add it to this. So what happens is the current master, there will be no changes on the current master, but where the changes will actually come in is on the worker nodes. The Nginx will be reconfigured. Okay, the new master, the new API server will just be added to the Nginx configuration, so that pending that time, as you are adding it, the previous master will still be taking the traffic. You understand? Okay. So yeah. So once the Nginx has the the configuration, since it has the high availability configuration. Then once it's up, then the other master too can start receiving API calls.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Fine. Good. Shall I switch to my screen?
Okay, let me check again if we have some more.
Okay.
Okay, we still have the etcd. Okay, you could switch to your screen. Hopefully, before you are done, the cluster
Okay,
should be up there.
we can switch back to your screen later.
Switch back to your screen later.
Yes, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you see my screen now. Okay. I think you see the meetup page, right?
Yes, yes.
Okay, good.
Yes, I can see
Let's
it.
go to the documentation. Okay. The main documentation is on OpenStack Helm, read the docs.io. It must be somewhere open. Yeah, here is it. So, yeah, from a great team, which is working, I think, more than 1.5 years. And this project now is an official OpenStack project, which helps you to have a resilient OpenStack deployment on Kubernetes. So what we did in the last 2 weeks together with Christopher was we decided to go with Kubespray, the installation which Christopher showed you, and install that on our own Bare-Metall. And yesterday I started to have that for our session on Packet.net with some problems, and I had to abort the installation and go back to our own Bare-Metall servers, where I'm going to show you the environment, but I'm somehow sure we can get it running on Packet.net as well. So if you don't know about Packet, Packet provides Bare-Metall as a service. You can run Bare-Metalls for minutes, hours, days, whatever, and use that. It's a great hosting environment for Bare-Metal servers to test or even for production. Good. That was the Git book, which Christopher showed you before, and I'm going to go very fast through it. The whole quick and dirty documentation will be provided as a Git book. Hopefully by the end of this week, I'm going to, together with Christopher, to extend that to a 5-node installation. Most probably 1 master and 4 nodes, worker nodes, and then provide the provide the guideline as a Git book to you, but the link to this one, this documentation that should work, is public. Good. The first thing is, after you go through the Kubespray installation, then you'll get, for instance, here is a 3-node installation. The scheduling is by default disabled on the master, but if you want to enable that, your containers run on the master as well, which is not a good idea, but you can by doing, where do I have my cheat sheet here, kubectl uncordon and then your master node here. And then the installation is really straightforward. You have to clone the Git repository from the OpenStack Helm project, change to the directory, and download Helm, extract that, and provide execution rights to Helm, and then move that to your user local bin. And install Tilla, that's the server component of Helm pack, and Helm init with Helm init, and then make sure after 30 seconds you have to wait and call Helm version, and you will see that the server version is running. In our case, I think that's the latest Helm version, 2.6.0. Perhaps I'm wrong, but I'm using that version. And then you have to install this package. This is not, unfortunately, provided on OpenStack Helm page. If you don't run this, then your Ceph installation won't work. So I do it in red. Very important if you are going to start that. And then you have to label your nodes. In my case, I'm going to show you a 2-node installation, one master, one worker node. My worker node is csky07. Then you can label the node for your Ceph monitor or SDN-MDS. If you have other nodes, then for instance, node 1, then you have to adopt the node name here. Or if you have more than one node and you want to have your Ceph, normally for Ceph is recommended to have at least 3 Bare-Metall servers for high availability, and then label your OpenStack control plane where you want to run the OpenStack containers, or the control plane for OpenStack, and also label the nodes where your Open vSwitch should run, and your compute nodes, right? What you shouldn't do, as in the document stated in the documentation, is what it didn't work for me, and I had a lot of troubles with that, was to label the nodes as stated here. So that didn't work. So I had to exclude the master node and only provide the worker nodes to have running Ceph. The Ceph installation is very crucial. That's the first step. Ceph and later MariaDB. If that doesn't work on your own, on your lab environment, whatever, on your Bare-Metalls, then you should see what's going wrong. I have a troubleshoot. I'm going to write, or I have a short troubleshooting section where, if something goes wrong, to show you what you can do. Good. Then what is not? I got a lot of help from Pete from OpenStack Helm team. So regarding DNS, this is also not stated on provided on the documentation page. So after running your cluster, then you have to see or to find the IP address of your kube DNS, your DNS server. So, and this should be set in your as a name server in your resolve conf. And then in addition, you have to define this to search for your DNS server on all nodes, on master and on the worker nodes. If you don't do that, then you won't have any chance to get Ceph running or MariaDB installed. That's very important. So, good. After installing, preparing your nodes, that's all about node preparation. I will show you the etc host. That's also the etc host will be populated or configured by Kubespray. So you don't need to adapt anything, I think, but I'll show you on terminal later. So, and then you have to clone the OpenStack Helm and then run the Helm server and add the local repo to your environment and do a make. And after it builds your local repository with Helm charts, which you use later to install all images or containers on your Kubernetes environment. So, and then here you have to export your public and cluster network. That's the name, the IP CIDR of my. That was the IP of on packet.net. And then you can start to install Ceph. That's the first step. So put the whole thing or run it on your master, and then install the Ceph OpenStack config, which is very, very important for your MariaDB later. And then you can watch what happens during the installation. If you are going to try this, please go very slow, one command after one command, and watch your all namespaces and see what your pods are doing. That's the same. I can clean it. So, and MariaDB installation is with Helm. Install the name of your chart, and then in the namespace OpenStack will be installed. And so where I was not sure but I don't think that is needed to set the network public switch here. But I'm not so sure. I let it, and I have to see if that's needed, if I have done that during the installation. So, and other services is very straightforward. How you can install Memcache, etcd, RabbitMQ, Ingress Controller, Keystone, Horizon, Glance, and so on, and Heat. But before you do the Neutron and Nova installation, you have to adapt the Nova metadata AP. That's the information which is missing on the documentation side as well. And choose a free IP from your namespace, from your IP, IP room, which is a free IP from my kubedns IP address. And don't forget, after adapting this unless Nova or Neutron won't work, you can't install that, and you have to run make again. So under your OpenStack Helm directory. So the same thing applies to Nova compute as well. So, and if you run the make and then run, that's the last command, which needs 1, 2 to 3 minutes to get Nova installed as the last step. And here are some, okay, that was the troubleshooting section, which I'm going to write in detail. Good. Then please let us go to, okay, before I switch to that environment, to my shell, that's the environment where you will get. I had today, I cleaned up the whole installation yesterday, and on the same servers where I had a initial installation, which on a fresh Bare-Metall, which went smoothly last week. But after cleaning up or resetting the Kubernetes cluster with Kubespray, then I had a lot of problems to get the environment running again. Most probably it would be easier to install a new fresh installation of CentOS, which we are using on the Bare-Metall or Ubuntu, whatever, and then do a fresh installation of OpenStack Helm. So then let me go to you see my terminal, I hope. Good. Here we have 2 servers, the CSK.IO clear here. That's my master. So, and that's the get nodes. You see I have a 2-node installation. That's my API master server, and then the CSK.IO 7 is here, and that's the worker node. Fine. So here what I showed you is very important. I have to explain that again. Very, very important is to set the name server in your resolve conf. Where to find this IP address is you can run kubectl get svc of minus all name bases, and then, or you can grep after kubedns, grep kubedns, and exactly this IP address of the kubedns should be set in your resolve conf. Very, very important. So what I've installed that today in the morning, started a new installation, which didn't succeed to the end due to some problems of glance, which pulls an image, is this Cirrus image, and the whole OpenStack Helm repository was down and is going to get propagated in this hour. Perhaps we can do and see what is going wrong. So what we have after running the whole commands, which I showed you, then we can get all of our parts, all name spaces, minus. Okay. So that's, you see we have several, okay. First we have our Ceph. installation here is running fine. So that's very important. That's the first step. And then we have also here, that's in the Ceph namespace, and we install also MariaDB. Here, that's 3 pods which are running on the worker node. That yeah, the MariaDB installation made me a lot of headache. So the reason was, if you are going to reset your cluster, then you, during the MariaDB installation, the persistence volume claim kubectl get pvc minus namespace OpenStack, I think. Yeah. So you see, I have these PVCs which are bound. So if you clean up your installation, it might be, or I'm sure now, the PVC will not get deleted. So you have to delete that by hand. So, and I didn't know that. So, and by the second installation, I couldn't install any MariaDB, and without MariaDB, you can't install any other components, right? So it doesn't work. Any other containers. But what we got today, the problem again, get pods. Get PO all namespaces. So you can see the Neutron. I think that's the Neutron KS Keystone Service container pod has a crash loop back off. So, and then the other containers for okay, that was the glance. The glance had some problems. Neutron, where is the glance? Here, okay, the glance is now, that was the bootstrap. It's now running. It has pulled because the repo is, or the images are available again, and then it is fixed now. So how you can delete if something goes wrong, right? Like here, right? Your Neutron server is in the init state and doesn't come up. So what you have to do is to helm delete minus purge and Neutron. So what I did not on this environment is, because, okay, if you don't have any Neutron, it doesn't make any sense to go further and install Nova compute on the server, right? So then hopefully it gets deleted in some seconds. Then we can see how to deploy that and watch the whole thing and see if Neutron is going to come up. Okay, so one other thing, if something goes wrong and you want to start over, it is a good idea to delete the whole namespace, OpenStack and Ceph. And as I mentioned, to delete also the persistence volume claim by hand. That was the 2 main points where I had to learn how to get the environment back on an environment where I had already the whole thing running. Okay. Neutron. Okay. Good. Let's go to any questions in between? No. Let's go to our so I had a paste ini. Good. One more thing is if you want to see which nodes have problems, or the most with Kubernetes, persistent is a crucial thing, right? I think you know that. If you want to find what is going, for instance, let's go back to my terminal. I abort that here. If I want to see, for instance, what's going wrong with my MariaDB, or get the kubectl describe MariaDB. That was what I showed you in the paste -n OpenStack. So MariaDB, okay, describe. Describe pod MariaDB. I think I have to set oh that's 0. So this will give you the describe command, will give you what is really going on in your MariaDB pod, right? So, and this is very helpful if MariaDB doesn't work out of the box. You should have at least 3 MariaDB pods running on your worker nodes. In my case, I'm running here. If I look at PS, you see I have 1 MariaDB here and 2. Okay, why 2? Where is the third one? So okay, good. So I'm not sure what's going wrong. Perhaps I have another, but I have disabled. Okay, I have good. I did to test the whole thing if I could schedule also use my master node to see if I can have 2 nodes running my pods. And I couldn't that to be able, but now is scheduling is disabled. But at that time, as today early in the morning, as I started the installation, the scheduling was enabled. So here, and then I disabled with uncordon, right? So therefore, here I have 1 container or 1 pod running now on my master node, and 2.1 is running now on my worker nodes. So that's how good. Let's go to the history. Okay, you see, there was a lot of work here, 1,000 commands since 2 weeks. The first installation went not smoothly without the help from Pete. Great support from OpenStack Helm community. They're on Slack. If you want to try the whole thing on Kubernetes, I recommend I go switch back to my Slack. Go here is the OpenStack Helm channel, very active. You see here, I had a question here today why Glance didn't work, and then after some minutes, I got the feedback from Pete Beerley that the repos need to some time to propagate. The download servers have been down, so very great help, very great guys. Most of them are working for AT&T, and without their help and support, it was really not possible to get the whole thing up and running. The final version of OpenStack Helm 1.0 general available will come, I think, in October, before the OpenStack Summit in Sydney, I think, this year. And we are going to provide the OpenStack Helm or OpenStack environment on top of Kubernetes running with Kubespray to the project Kubicorn, to Chris Nova and her team, a 5-node installation, and they are going to develop the OpenStack provider for Kubicorn. Yeah, we are planning to work with OpenStack Helm project more closely and see where we can be of help, and get help from them. Yeah, that's my part. Perhaps going back to our channel, and there was some discussion. Oh, there are a lot of messages here about CKA. So I think some of you are in the CKA, Certified Kubernetes Administrator channel. This week, Daniel Sachse, Wombat, and I think Joost Hoffman started with the CKA exam, and they wrote that it was somehow very hard. And as you know, we are going to provide some preparation course and support for the CKA exam and sponsor the CKA exam for you for 50 for 50 guys, girls, whatever. I think we are all only guys, unfortunately. And currently we have 54 members in our channel. Some of them like Marky here, and Sergey, they are, and also Christopher, who provided the Kubespray session to us. They are going to take the exam, the beta exam, and there will be some more seats available, I hope, and we can provide it. We have a waiting list to other guys who are on the waiting list. Good. Is there any questions regarding OpenStack on Kubernetes, guys? Wait, so in chat, nothing. Okay, so I hope you heard me the whole time.
Yeah. Good, Arash.
Okay, good. Happy. So hopeful it was useful somehow for you if you're going to test the whole thing on VM. Okay, on VM it doesn't make sense for OpenStack. You need Bare-Metall, but I think a visualized installation on VM should be possible. Um, but our focus is more on Kubernetes to have to provide a nice guideline for or extend our Kubespray essentials for HA. And on that H8 environment, we're going to provide OpenStack, and on top of that OpenStack again, provide a Kubernetes cluster for our labs. So you can get also access to our Kubernetes cluster for your trainings or CKE exam. And I hope in 1 or 2 weeks, by beginning of mid of September, on the 11th, September 11th, the CKE final exam will be announced by Open Source Summit in USA, and then hope by that time, before we register some of you for the exam, we could provide some Kubernetes clusters to you to play, destroy, build again, and so on. So VMs which are running on OpenStack.
Yeah.
Um,
So
yeah.
sorry, just to add over there. So even I'm planning to like create a whole CK lab environment for our CK aspirants from Kubernauts. The two key integral thing that I know as of now about their exam is there will be a total of 8 clusters. I asked about like what each cluster respectively means, because if you see the naming convention, right, each cluster has a specific prefix to the word K8s, and that prefix actually is represents as when the particular cluster's properties. As for example, the high availability cluster is named HK8s. So yeah, I plan to get like all of those 8 clusters created along with uh, the web browser terminal that will be used in the certification exam. That is the Gate One uh, software, Gate One web terminal that they will be using. So
Mm-hmm.
yep, let's see how that goes.
Okay, so if I got you right, so these 8 different clusters, they are,
Mm-hmm.
as I understood, they are the canonical distribution of Kubernetes, right?
Yeah.
So is there any specification where how these clusters has been built?
So there isn't any specification released by CNCF or the whole certification committee as of now, but the cluster naming have been provided to us. So the 8 clusters that we have, right? Uh, what is the cluster configuration for each cluster that will be available to us, and the CNI plugin that will be used for that particular cluster. So things like that has been provided to us. Just give me a sec. Can I share my screen?
Yeah, for sure.
Okay. No, it says become the presenter to start sharing the
But
screen.
I Arush top send. Okay, you should have the.
Yeah, the extension. Yeah. Can you see my screen?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. So yeah, these are the 8. Sorry, these are the 8 different clusters that will be available to us with the respective configuration for each cluster. and the CNI plugin. As you can see, right, the for these two particular cluster, we can like beforehand we can speculate and the problem that will be revolving these clusters. So this one has the master node missing, and this one has the worker node missing. So these will be the clusters surrounding which the whole troubleshooting
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
problems probably will be given. And similarly, any or all of the HA related problems will be targeting this particular cluster. So similarly, I had to, I guess, but yeah, I had asked that to Walmart on like if he could tell me what. Uh, so this suffix, this particular letter, this particular suffix to each cluster name has like some very particular meaning about the whole cluster configuration. So if we can like know
Yeah.
about that, which like all these particular clusters, what they respectively mean, most probably we will be able to map out the whole exam and the right strategy for the exam more efficiently.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Yeah, that's if we can rebuild or we can somehow know what the problems which they created on, let's say, a cluster with a missing master.
Hmm.
We can build that on our own environment and then provide it to the CKA channel. And there are a lot of guys who also, like Marky or Daniel, who could help us, who are going to go through the exam. They
Even,
can provide some more information, or like you or Christopher, how we can deal with that.
yeah, so
But
even
I
I'm scheduled for this Thursday.
please.
Even I'm scheduled for this Thursday. I'll
Yeah,
be
yeah.
appearing.
For Thursday. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, fine. Very
I
nice.
waited, yeah, I waited till like the last day, last hour to ensure I have all information and practice that can
Okay,
be available.
good.
So yeah. So apart from this, like there's the Gate one's web browser terminal that basically they will be using for providing us the access and the environment. So I found it pretty like good on practicing through that particular web browser terminal itself instead of the actual terminal. So
Okay. Hmm. That's the terminal.
yeah, just give me a sec. So I'm running it in my yes. It will take a little bit of time to get the whole thing started. And, let me just see if there was some issue.
So I will stop the recording, right? So we don't